What's up, everybody? This is Nick.
And this is Eric.
And I want to welcome you to the Pull Up a Chair podcast. As always, we are here to talk about things of nostalgia, things that remind us of the past. And Eric, we got a good one today.
We sure do.
I am excited because this was something that I was waiting for. And if you don't know, Eric, what do we have to bring the people today?
In our first ever one topic podcast, because we can probably talk 2 or 3 hours about this one topic, we're going to talk about the new, not just the new Netflix series Castlevania, but the old game and any kind of things we can remember. You played it more than I did. You tell me.
By the way, you're probably, if you're listening to this or watching, you will notice that we have microphones, or if you're listening to us, you're probably realizing, man, Nick's voice sounds good.
Like sweet, sweet velvet cake.
I was thinking like butter.
Butter. No, your voice is...
My voice sounds like butter.
I don't know what butter sounds like.
It's kind of squishy.
Squishy?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird.
You slip on it.
But we have a new setup. We are actually very excited. We're hoping it makes us sound better, less popping, less locking, less, I don't know what else
What other dance terms do you want to throw in there?
Jitterbugging.
Less pirouetting.
Less jitterbugging, less dabbing.
Less dabbing? Okay.
That's all I got. But, Eric, we need to move on to this. And
Let's do it
quickly, we have a whole series. Now, this was a short series. It was only 4 episodes. Netflix released it this past weekend. And I'll be honest, I watched them very quickly. I don't know how you watched them. Did you space them out, or did you just go right for it like I did?
I watched one, and then my children arrived, and so I had to stop because it's not much of a child-friendly show for the kids my age. My age. My kids are my own age. They're clones of me.
Children our age.
No, for my kids who are much younger, under 10, it's not a kid-friendly show. So I watched the first one. Then the next day I watched 2 and 3, but my kids arrived again, and I was halfway through 3. My kids, it was mid-afternoon, took the younger 2, put them down for a nap. My 9-year-old, I go, hey, I'm going to watch the rest of this. If it gets bad, I'll just stop it and make you go to another room. He's like, okay. And of course I hit play, and within 3 words, it was curse words, which is, it's not a lot of curse words, but the 3rd episode I think has the most. And he started cussing, and I just looked at him and go, don't cuss. He knows that. He knows all the cuss words.
Right.
He's a kid.
Don't use these words.
That's
basically what you're telling him.
Yeah, I was like, you know better. You don't like, that's not what we do.
Right.
And so he's fine with that.
Did you also explain to him that you do not hit people with a whip?
No.
Don't whip people.
No. I didn't explain him not to do that. We've talked about how to do it
Properly?
appropriate. Yeah,
gotcha.
Even the main character, what's his name? Trevor. Yeah, he was out of practice. Took that guy's eye out.
Oh, he did. He took a finger off.
Took a finger off.
He took off body parts with that thing. I gotta tell you.
I guess that's possible with a whip. I've seen people snap like hot dogs in half, but I don't know about human body parts. They're much denser than like a hot dog, I would believe.
It is, but I mean, it can. If you're fast enough or you can whip it enough, it will break through, from what I understand.
Okay, if you say so,
buddy. That is what I call science.
Okay, thanks for that science explanation.
We will try to MythBusters that at some point.
I'm good.
I'll
get a whip.
Let you hold something.
No, I'm good.
And I will whip it.
And
whip
so
it good.
I watched the 4th episode the next day, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. I forgot it was only going to be 4 episodes. I thought it was going to be 8.
I will be honest. That was something that did get me, because when it ended, it just seemed very abrupt.
Yeah, it did just kind of stop.
It seemed. I mean, it didn't have any. There wasn't any resolution to anything that was other than. Well, we don't want to get into that. By the way, just so you know, if you haven't watched it, this will be spoiler heavy.
Good thing. I didn't think about saying that.
We will be talking about the series, talking about each episode, and really, I don't know, dissecting the plot. I recognize this because one of my favorite Castlevania games as a kid was Dracula's Curse Part 3, and this story, this series pretty much follows that video game.
Yeah.
And I played the heck out of that video game as a kid. So
what was that on the NES?
That was on the NES. It was one of the last. It was kind of that last period of games right before they went to Super Nintendo. So it was
okay.
It was kind of on that weird teeter of we're about to go to Super Nintendo, but we still have a few games we're developing for this.
Speaking of Super Nintendo, just a quick side note: the mini Super Nintendo went up for pre-orders.
Really?
I think it might already come out. It is. You can't get one unless you want to pay $400, $500 for one.
I guarantee after that first one, they realized we can make some money off this, and they're.
Well, they already knew that, but they usually do a limited release on the first one for news.
What games do they have on it?
I don't remember. There's like 80.
80 games?
I don't remember. There's a bunch. I might pick one up once they drop in price, if they do.
Once they go on eBay for twice the price?
They're already on eBay for twice the price, I think.
All right, we are going to take a quick foray into what SNES games are on this, because now all of a sudden I'm interested in this. We will get back to our regularly scheduled talk about Castlevania here in about 5 seconds. Let's see what all we have here. Well, you got NES mini games, NES Classic Edition, which, by the way, NES Classic Edition, didn't it have Castlevania and Castlevania 2 on it?
I don't know.
I don't know that it had Castlevania 3. I do believe
that's
the original one did have Castlevania, and Castlevania 2 did not have Castlevania 3. I do remember Castlevania 3 was a larger game. Was a larger game than part 1 or 2. I don't remember how much larger, but it was ridiculous. Okay. Oh, there's only 21 classic Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay. Well, I mean,
it's not too bad.
It's not too bad at all. I mean, it's got some good games on there. You've got Castlevania 4. You've got Punch Out, which was actually a fun game on the Super Nintendo. You've got Kirby's. You got Star Fox. Of course, you've got all of the iterations of pretty much. Mario.
What did the classic NES have?
Classic NES had 30 games. It had 30 different ones. Although you also have Street Fighter 2 on there on the Super Nintendo. There's quite a few on there.
I'm just trying to find the list of games.
They have Legend of Zelda 2, Super Mario Brothers 3 and 1.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong.
Final Fantasy, the original.
Looks like Metroid.
Castlevania, the original. There it is.
Yeah, Castlevania 1. I think Castlevania 2 was on there too.
Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest is on there. You're right.
Part 3 was not. I do remember thinking when I read that I was a little disappointed in that. But I mean, they came with a good lineup of games on these things. Ninja Gaiden was a big game that I enjoyed.
One of these. I want one of each.
Well, want and need, Eric. Want and need.
I know.
So let's get back to this show.
Okay.
I will say this. It was an interesting show. It had some parts that I didn't really...
Like what?
Well, some parts that I thought were unneeded. I understand going into the bar, setting up the whole thing that Trevor's family, the Belmont family, is one that has been disgraced. They are no longer looked at as a group that is welcomed anywhere. In fact, inside the bar, if you remember correctly, the guy is sitting there talking and saying how
bad-mouthing.
All of this stuff is the Belmont's fault. And so, of course, that triggers Trevor. When we'll get to the beginning part here in a second.
That is the beginning.
Well, no, there's that whole thing with...
Oh, you mean with the girl?
With Lisa and Dracula and...
We'll get you.
We'll get to that here in a second. But
okay.
That whole bit between the two guys about who was screwing the sheep or having relations with the sheep, I think it went on a little too long.
It did go a long ways.
It went too far, in my opinion. I mean, I don't...
Is that paying homage to something else? Because I didn't recognize it.
I think it just paid homage to just the weirdness of the 1400s.
I guess.
And I just don't. It didn't really add anything to the story, except these two guys just riffing about hitting a dude with a shovel that was having relations with a sheep.
Yeah, it went blind.
Yeah. I don't. That was a little too long for me. There were some parts to me that carried on a little too long that I think they could have done more story versus having these scenes in there. The scenes where, another thing where Dracula's army is terrorizing the town. Once again, it's a bunch of fast cuts of showing people disembowel.
Which time?
The one where we kind of talked about where it's showing like the baby being carried away and those things like that. I think that little segment carried on a little too long. I don't know. Some of the aspects of this thing, some of the different things.
That shooting is very anime-like to overemphasize the darkness of something.
Well, and I understand that.
And I mean, we were watching and we've talked about the director, the writer, the producer. They all are heavily influenced by manga, anime writing, and the Hammer horror genre, like Warren Ellis's childhood was Hammer horror, and they much slower, so they linger on these darker images and imagery to really burn it into you. So you truly understand the fear and the weight of what is happening.
And boy, did they really, like you say, dwell on those parts.
Yes.
I mean, there is a lot of darkness. Now, I mean, just to give a quick overview of the story, it begins with a woman named Lisa. Her and Vlad meet, and she gets, we don't get a real understanding of how much time passes.
Yeah.
Between the beginning scene where they meet and then years later where she gets burned at the stake. She gets mistakenly shown to be a witch, and then they burn her at the stake, which really pisses Vlad off. Obviously, he comes back and he finds out about it.
Yes. And
as a final thing, while she's being burned on the stake, she calls out and tells someone to be better.
Yes.
To be better than them, to not do anything, to not hurt them, because they didn't know what they did, or they don't understand what they're doing, type of thing. Very Jesus. Yeah, a very Jesus moment. And there's a lot of imagery in this show that has that kind of religious aspect of it. We talked a lot about that. We'll talk more about that. The religious, they're not undertones at all. They're very prevalent tones of religious imagery and religious practices. Well, there's that, and a lot of religious. And here's the thing. This was the church of the time. The 1500s, there was a lot of witch hunts. I know a lot of people look at it, and I've read some reviews and things like that, where people feel like this was attacking the church. I didn't feel that at all. No, I didn't either. Because whether you want to admit it or not, this was the history of the church. Yeah, exactly. And so I felt like it was I felt like it was well done. The storyline seemed to flow pretty well. From there, we're introduced to Trevor. We're introduced to the Belmonts. Yep. And we just have a whole lot of fighting going on. It was violent. It was, if you follow the storylines of Castlevania like I did, I played a bunch of the Castlevania games. And even when I got to the point where I couldn't, some of the games started showing up on Sega, but they were still, they still considered in the main timeline. I got online and I read about what their storyline was, so I knew what was going on in the main timeline, type of deal. Yes, you did? I was a nerd. I mean, I didn't do that. You must have done that once. When did you get the internet? buddy, I mean, here's the thing. When a lot of that was going on, we had the internet. I mean, it's not like internet just all of a sudden appeared, but I was able to get on things like, obviously Wikipedia wasn't around, but Game FAQs, a very old website, and I was able to read about, how the game flowed and what happened. Some people in their FAQs would sit there and tell you every cutscene, like what the storyline was.
Oh, okay.
And so, yes, I looked this stuff up so I could know like what was happening in Mega Man, what was happening in Castlevania, what was happening in all these different series.
Okay, that's cool. I never got into doing that. I do it a little bit here and there now because I just don't have the time to play. I don't really think about what the interconnected storylines from the NES, the SNES, Sega, I'm sure Atari 2600, the Atari 7200. Is there any other games that have a big storyline like this? Metroid does.
Metroid has a big storyline.
Castlevania, which introduces what is the genre called?
Metroidvania.
Yeah, Metroidvania. Yeah, it's style of gaming.
I mean, there's games that there's Castlevania has, I don't remember how many games they consider it in its main storyline.
Okay.
There's a bunch, more than you would think, because it even came out on Game Boy. It came out on.
Yeah, I remember those, the Game Boy games, and I knew those were part of the, what is that called? The lore.
Yeah.
They were part of the lore.
But if you're looking at what other series have long-standing stories like this, you're talking.
I mean, Zelda.
You're talking.
But something about Castlevania seems more tight in their storytelling than even Zelda does, from what I can remember. It seems a little more in depth.
It is.
I'm sure people who are like hardcore Zelda fans will get mad at me for saying that.
Well, and in my research, I looked up a little bit about kind of the backstory of some of these characters.
Okay, you mean the main characters from the Netflix series?
Right, from the Netflix series, but also in the actual series.
Okay.
Games.
What'd you learn?
Well, the Dracula in this timeline is actually a guy by the name of Matthias. He was a knight back in the let's see here. He was a knight back in way before this with another gentleman by the name of Leon Belmont. Now Matthias, I'm going to try to pronounce this. I'm going to butcher it. Kronkvist.
Yep, that's how I'd say it.
Anyway, but he was friends with Leon Belmont. Belmont's fiance gets kidnapped and killed. Belmont is a knight of the church. He renounces the church and he goes and he kills this vampire that killed his fiance, who's the name of, I guess, Walter.
That's a great vampire name. If I'm ever turned to a vampire,
you want it to be,
I'm changing my name to Walter the Vampire.
It's just Walter.
Just Walter.
Here's the thing. When you're making a throwaway character, you really just don't care about what name you give.
Throwaway? No. Walter the Vampire is a great character.
Like, who murdered your wife? Wally over there. Stupid Wally.
Wally V.
But you find out that this was all a plan by Matthias,
okay,
Leon's friend, who did this so that he could defy God.
All
and
right.
he's trying to do that. So in the game, you end up defeating Matthias. Later on, Matthias he changes his name after some things go on.
Walter 2.
No, to Dracula Vlad Tepes. But he's living in peace, and then it says that he eventually declares himself king of the night and changes his name to Vlad Tepes. He continued to hide in foreign lands, biding his time for when he would.
Did you say biting or biting?
Biting.
Biting or biting?
Yeah, okay, I get your joke.
No, I'm
biting. BIDING.
Okay, I still sounds like you're saying biting.
His dreadful power upon the world. Anyway,
I wasn't making a joke. I was being serious. I didn't understand.
Whatever.
I thought you were making a pun.
Whatever. You were making a vampire pun, sir. A vampire pun, a biting pun. I get it.
Okay.
But this leads all of this leads into the Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. And by this point, because of the power they have, and this whip that Leon Belmont used was passed down through the Belmont family.
It's a sacred whip.
Yes.
They even mentioned that in the series one time, I think. It's sacred
Yes,
or something.
it does. I think it's actually called Vampire Killer. I think that's what they named it.
It's a very original name.
It is. It tells you what it's used for. It almost has the instructions in the name.
I've heard it even killed the most greatest of vampires, Walter.
Well, it did. Dread Vampire Walter. I realize that is a solid point. It did. It's his blood that gives it this power. Actually, here's the thing.
What's that?
It was actually made from the soul of Sarah, who was Leon's fiance.
So that whip is a soul, or it has a soul?
I guess it has a soul, or it's imbued with a soul, or I don't really know.
You know what that reminds me of?
All I know is it had the power to kill the most greatest vampire of all, Walter.
This is a side note talking about manga. Not manga, One Piece. One Piece is a manga anime. In an anime, they talk about they have the fruit, and you get the powers from the devil fruit.
Yes.
Whatever it's called in Japanese. One of the creatures that the Navy has is an elephant that turns into a sword.
Okay.
And they go, "Oh, you got an elephant to eat the sword fruit, and so you can play him with a sword." He goes, and they go, "No, we got a sword to eat the elephant fruit." And that just reminds me of a whip imbued with the soul of a human versus I guess a human can't be imbued with the soul of a whip, but that just kind of reminds me of that.
No, I don't really understand the science behind it. I don't claim to understand the science behind it. I'm sure that.
But this is a science podcast, isn't it?
I mean, don't get me wrong.
We're a SciCast.
I'm sure if you went back and you played the game, you would understand the science behind it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is some science.
It's like neutrinos and quarks.
Right. The DNA somehow.
DNA? We're getting into souls here. The DNA of the whip,
the
obviously.
DNA of the whip and the quark DNAs with the.
Yeah.
Anyway, sciencey words.
We don't want to get in the weeds with that.
No, we don't.
It's too technical for our listeners.
But this is basically where we pick up. We meet Sarah or Lisa, who is Vlad's second wife, and she gets killed while he's traveling, and then because of that, he declares that he's going to kill all of humanity, and that's what begins this whole Castlevania nonsense. And there you go, sir. That is where we end up. We pick up. That's basically where we pick up the story.
Yep.
Now I'm very curious we'll get into that here in a second. Season 2 has already been announced. I'm curious if it will go back and kind of explain some of this stuff, or if we'll continue the story. I don't really know. But at the end, she screams, that very Jesus type thing. I believe because when I was reading about Alucard's history, he witnessed his mom's death. According to this, she died, or he was in the crowd at the time, according to the history or according to the lore of Castlevania.
Uh-huh.
And so he ends up hearing that.
So it becomes a marker in the character development of Alucard.
It does. And it is something that actually comes back up later in one of the games, because he tells Dracula at the end of Symphony of the Night.
Okay.
He tells Dracula her final words.
Yes.
And so that becomes something.
Walter was better than you.
Yes, I loved Walter.
I love Walter more.
Yeah.
He's a better vampire.
He was a better vampire. So, I mean, that's the story we're given. Now, if you continue on with these episodes, I mean, it is we travel basically with Trevor through Wallachia, or
great name,
I
hard to
believe
pronounce.
is the same country that Black Panther is from.
It does sound like, what is that? What is he from?
I think it's like Wachovia or something.
Oh, that is band.
I know. I've got
got a couple hundred years to get to
We do.
Black Panther.
So we see the army spread at the end of episode 1 because Dracula, what did he give him? He gave him how long?
1 year
1 year to run, basically.
to make right with their god.
That's right. And then they're holding this big ceremony.
Yes.
And that's when everything kicks off. He's like, even the bishop's like, we were all there when the vision came, and the devil, Satan himself, said that he was going to kill everybody.
Great timing by Vlad there.
Yeah, I know.
Timing that perfectly with the ceremony. Either
Right.
It's like not even it was a year then. And like, look, it's been a year, nothing's happened. It's been exactly a year. It's not like, oh, what if they were off a day? What if there was a leap year?
Well,
he looked like the bishop there looked like a fool.
Yes, he did, and I felt bad for him.
For the 3 seconds he stayed alive after
Yes,
everything went down.
as he got peeled apart.
Exactly.
But I mean, even Dracula, it's almost as if he planned it that way, because he's even like, I gave you a chance to run, and you all instead celebrate my wife's death.
It's like they actually like don't have the celebration, so he's like, oh, I can't attack yet.
Right. He's like,
So if they didn't have a celebration, he'd be like, when are they going to have that celebration to celebrate the death of my wife? I need to attack them.
he's like watching somewhere behind a tree or something. Like, wait for it.
Looking like
Wait for it. Like, wait. He's like, I have been here all night.
What is
I've
going
got
on?
pee.
Gotta pee.
So,
What?
he does. He releases his army. He releases.
Oh, I thought you were talking
hounds.
about peeing still.
No,
Okay.
no. There's a lot of questions in the anatomy about that, my friend. But I mean, would it be bloody?
We don't need to get it. I was thinking the same thing.
I don't know.
What would he pee?
I don't know. We don't need to hemoglobin.
Maybe.
I don't know. So, and it unleashes this big horde of things, which
Yes.
it's, I will admit, very well animated. Like, I definitely felt like there was a lot of death based on.
Did you notice that when the creatures came down, they came down in like fetus form?
Yes.
And then did they grow instantaneously or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those little things when you dropped them in water.
Yeah, and they grow into like a dinosaur?
Right.
Sponge?
I mean, that's basically what happened.
Okay.
The water in this instance was the ground. Once it the fetus got into the dirt, it just
Okay.
spread
Kinda like
out.
species.
Right.
Gotcha.
Now, if those people would have been smart, they would have started stomping on those things before they
You
could
would
grow.
think so.
But they did not. Instead, they let them grow, and these things start carrying things off like children, babies in the
mouths?
mouth.
Yeah, that was a bit of a. I rarely see anime or dark series, even adult content, where children are hurt, and especially babies. And when I saw that, I was like, "Wow!" It struck me pretty hard. I was like, I was not expecting. I've watched a lot of dark anime, a lot of dark series, adult series. For some reason, that really still struck me.
Well, yeah. Now, I will say the color palettes on this show were beautiful.
Yes, reds, browns. Oh, I'd have to look at a scene. Now, each character had its own color palette, and we talked about this earlier. No, we didn't talk about it on podcast, though. The color palettes for the character was based off of the Castlevania sprites from Castlevania 3, which I thought was a fantastic idea. From what I remember hearing, it was because people may not remember the game, the story of the game, but they will remember the colors of the characters because they were so iconic.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's a great homage to the games. Of course, I will say one of the biggest things that they got right is when they showed Vlad's castle. It was the
silhouette.
Like the silhouette of
It was
Castlevania.
perfect.
It was very well done.
It was amazing. The art direction in Castlevania is spectacular.
By the way, that little fact that you got that off of about the sprites, where did you learn that? Because I mean, I find that just fascinating.
I watched a video
You watched a video?
by Cartoon
Eric
Hangover.
watches?
Eric watches. I watched a video by Cartoon Hangover, who is owned by Federator.
Yeah,
I'm not really.
Federator, yeah.
There's their correlation somehow
Right.
between those two, and Federator is the maker of Castlevania,
Gotcha.
and that is amazing. Is one of the main with I forget the other company that they partner with to make Castlevania. Federator bought the rights in 2005 to Castlevania. Think about that. 2005, 12 years ago, they bought the rights to this to make this. The storyline was written in 2007 by Warren Ellis, who we've mentioned, who also has credits to his names, like he wrote some of Space, the space one. Dark Space? Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up now.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Star Wars?
Deep Space. Dead Space.
Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine. Justice League Unlimited. He wrote an episode of that. And G.I. Joe Resolution, if you watched that television series, along with a couple other games. And he's, of course, more known for his writing in comic books with the X-Men, Astonishing X-Men series. So this guy knows his stuff.
Apparently, he has a lot of things that haven't been published, from what I understand. He has a lot of things that he's written.
Well, this sat on the shelf for a decade, waiting for somebody to fund it.
An opportunity.
In 2015, Netflix talked to the producers, and they brought the project to life.
Right.
And that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
I find it fascinating that he chose this spot to begin his story. Like, of all the things that he could have written,
he started number 3.
He started at number 3. I mean, because you had Simon Belmont, which Trevor, don't get me wrong, Trevor Belmont was the predecessor. Like, part 3 you knew happened before.
Yeah.
In 1476. But
I think it's Alucard.
Even then, you think it's Alucard?
I think it's Alucard.
You think this story will follow Alucard more than it will follow the Belmonts?
I think to a point it will with shows that with the newer genre of this really dark adult fantasy genre that's come out. Like in 2005, 2007, this would have never gotten made because of in the manner that it was made now, because they couldn't sell to anybody. There was not a platform to show such dark imagery, dark fantasy. There was no place to put it. I'm sure it went through writing revisions, and from what I've read and listened to, it got darker over time. Even as they developed it, they made it darker. Originally, it's supposed to have a kind of a feel. If you watch anime, Berserk and Cowboy Bebop, it's supposed to be kind of like Cowboy Bebop in the Berserk world. Berserk is very dark. Talk about children that are messed up. That's the end of Berserk season 1.
It's
Spoiler.
People getting eviscerated, much like this.
You could very similar tones and pacing.
Very violent, much like this.
Yeah.
If that's what they were going for, I will say this: they matched it.
Well, they thought it was too goofy. Having kind of some in the writing. When they started testing it out, they thought it was too goofy with the Cowboy Bebop is such a wonderful anime. It's balanced so well with comedy and drama. It's amazing. I should go back and watch it. And they were going to do that in this world, so it wasn't so dark. Though Belmont is a funny dude. His humor is spot on.
But he's more of a drunk.
He's a drunk.
Now,
very unhappy.
You also mentioned, or in that video, that little clip you showed me.
Yeah.
They also mentioned because of like Game of Thrones and things like that there has been an interest in doing this, right?
It kind of set the stage. I mean, Game of Thrones came from HBO. I was trying to think of another, a kind of vampire-ish. I hate to say it. What's that one with like Sookie? That one that's like a drama vampire series that was really dark and very nude.
Jersey
Shore? Yeah,
Jersey Shore.
That's it. Jersey Shore.
Sookie?
Not Sookie. Yeah, Sookie, not Snooky.
Oh, Snook. I'm sorry, I got those two mixed up.
I'm surprised. I had to think about it real quick to think of the Jersey Shore girl's name.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Sookie. I can't remember the name of that. Vampire Diary. No, not Vampire Diaries.
What do you watch?
It was on HBO, man. My wife liked it, and so I sat and watched it with her. It was kind of stupid, but it was very dark, very very graphic.
Okay.
And HBO. I think. What do you think? HBO really opened the door for this kind of genre to be more mainstream, maybe.
Well, and I know in some of the interviews, and this is part of the reason why I'm asking that, is because in some of the interviews, the guys that made this mentioned, a lot of them have mentioned Game of Thrones.
Well, I mean, look at Belmont's coat with his cape with fur on it, or his coat with that fur on it. Very Jon Snow.
It is. And he even has a crest, which I don't watch Game of Thrones, but what I understand is it's very much based on
the families.
The families fighting, which
but
I guess this is the same thing. You have the Belmont family who constantly fights
the church.
Not the church, the Dracula's family, because that's what they did.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I just heard you say excommunicated.
Yeah.
But we saw that the crest actually comes out of a lesser known Castlevania game.
I wouldn't say it was lesser known. It was just set
Soul.
a different timeline. It's the Lord of the Shadows.
What system was that? That was a Sega system, or
no? That was
Game Boy.
Xbox.
That was Xbox.
Yeah, that was Hideo Kojima made those ones.
Oh, okay.
He came, or his not, he didn't make them, but his
company
did. He was involved in it.
Okay.
And so
I gotcha.
That was just a different. He went out of the. It was when Konami said they weren't going to make any more in the official timeline.
Yeah.
And so he reset he just did a reboot.
Oh, okay.
Basically. And so it was
okay. I didn't know that.
It was a different series of games, but you're right.
That could be the reason they pulled it in, though, is because of making parallels with
paying homage to it.
Yeah, but both to the old game and to Game of Thrones.
Right. Well, I don't know if any of the other games. I'm not sure. I know 1, 2, and 3 didn't have it, and I don't remember 4 ever showing a crest for the Belmont family.
That's true.
So if they were going to have something to where somebody could identify him, they had to have the family crest. And at this point in the story, at least in this series, he's the last Belmont alive.
Yes,
according to what I've seen, because they've been excommunicated. They too were assumed to be basically witches.
Oh,
they had, like he says, that guy that was talking about the other that had relations with the sheep. He mentions that they conjured the devil or the devil. And so
your light's not coming on.
And so he does that. And it is, I will say it does a good job of setting that up. Of course, he heads to the city of Gresset after that, which is where he goes, and we see the aftermath of the army coming through. We see them basically throwing bodies. He basically comes in through the sewer, and we find that one bishop that was kind of a jerk hiding out there.
The one from that did the burning.
That did the burning, yes. He's the one that set this all up.
And you find out his goal is we got to start wrapping up.
We gotta run through the rest of this.
Yeah, he find out his goal is really to become the Pope through the destruction of every other town church.
Right.
And so if he's the last church, therefore defaultly he becomes the Pope.
And he wants, as he puts it, he wants to put his rule out there, where he would go after all the witches, which is what he wants.
Now let's get into the religious part of this just for a moment. He was a highly legalistic bishop. I mean, that's where it came from. That if you did anything that was, because he even criticized the cardinal or the Pope, and they criticize,
Yes.
and one of the other bishops talks like, "Oh, I dabbled in chemistry just to figure it out,"
Right.
and he kind of is like, he's like, "I'm gonna get you later."
He glares at him. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh. And when the demon walks in that speaks, that has the glowing teeth, awesome looking, amazing looking.
Oh yeah, the very well drawn, very well designed,
great imagery. He walks in, starts talking. You can't come in here. Demons can't come in the church. God is all he ever talked about. And the demon goes, "There's no God in this church.
Yeah, your God is not here.
Yeah, your God is not here." Fantastic. That's
It was a great line.
Before that, it really did seem a little bit attacky of religious, mainly the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Very much the Catholic Church. It seemed like an attack on that, but once he said that, your God is not here, I like that. I was like, oh, okay. So there's a couple implications from that. Is one, God exists in that world,
right?
And the demons know that,
right?
Whatever God form that is, his God does exist. His God has rejected him. That has got to be a kick in the gut to a guy like that,
right?
And then I was hoping they'd let him live. I'm hoping we'll see him later. I know he looked like he ate his head or something. I'm assuming he's actually dead. I was hoping he would come back later as like a
demon.
No, just like a guy in the background, just like chained up and yelling or something.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to be a guy in the background, like, "Hey guys,
what's up, guys?
I'm still here."
It's like, God hates you all.
Boy, that looks like it hurts.
Yeah. I was hoping he would come back later. Pretty sure he won't. Didn't look like he survived whatever was going on, but he gave him a kiss.
Right.
That was great. That's what set it in stone. I was like, man, that was a very good bringing together of both religious imagery with keeping a lot of very religious people kind of like, okay, I see where you're going there. It kind of throws out here it's not as bad as you think it is.
Right. No, I mean they did separate that, and up until that point, like you said, it felt like they were just saying, okay, the church is bad.
Yes.
But at that point, they make that distinction of, okay, and much like many people look at the church of the 1400s and 1500s, weren't exactly living the Christian love of Christ. I mean, we can debate that later.
Yeah.
But I have a pretty strong case that it wasn't like, they weren't turning the other cheek.
Yeah, not a lot of grace there, huh?
No, there wasn't. But I think they distinguished that very well in saying your God is not here, and it did. It made something. It made it something more because, like you said, it establishes that there is a God. It establishes that there is something more to it. Now, very quickly, we need to discuss some of the characters that we get introduced to here. The main thing that Trevor ends up doing in this city is he gets involved with these elders, where we meet Scythia.
You mean the speakers?
The speakers, yeah. Not the elders, you're right.
Got one right. Yes.
We meet Scythia Bellinades, who, if you've played the game... She.
Oh, what?
It's a she. But in the game...
Heresy.
In the game, you don't find out till the very end. But in the game, you play as... you get these three characters.
That's very Metroid.
You can play as.
Okay.
You can play... At some point, you have to choose one to be your traveling companion. You can switch to them.
Uh-huh.
And she's one of them, and she uses magic. You have Alucard, who is hiding in the castle, which here it's in
the catacombs. Yeah.
And you fight him, and because he's waiting for somebody that will help him defeat Dracula. And then there's a third character named Grant, who is a pirate who could climb walls and do all that stuff.
Yeah, we didn't get. Was he? I never saw a character like that.
He does not show up. However, I read an interview with the creator, and they said that there's possibly something there.
Oh, okay.
So he may be something that comes up later, which it is in the. I mean, it kind of would fit because you don't fight him until you actually get into the castle.
Yeah, he has. I mean, this.
He got turned into like a demon.
Yeah, he's a
something.
goblin demon thing looking.
And I will say this: it follows. It tracks so far as what happens because Sifia is in the game. She has been turned to stone.
And that by the Cyclops.
By the Cyclops, you fight a Cyclops, or you fight this thing, and she becomes unstoned. 420 people.
It's 421.
421. But then same thing in the show at the very end, him and Alucard fight.
Yes.
And Alucard gets him down, and of course he's got the knife in his belly or whatever, the classic fight,
Steak.
and they, kind of standoff type of deal.
He's testing him.
Right.
Are you a warrior?
Yes. And
yeah, sure. Okay,
yeah,
we're good.
And that's the thing. It was basically the classic stalemate where, especially in anime.
Oh, yeah.
It's the classic stalemate where one of them has a knife to the ribs and the other one's like bearing down on them, and they think they've won until they feel like the cold steel. And that's where we basically end. Is he goes back to his little coffin, and he pulls out what looks like a jacket.
Well, because it gets cold in there.
Well, I guess so. He pulls out his.
It's cold in it, even though it's pumping hot something through the pipes. Don't know what that's about.
Yeah, it was very weird, but I mean, he goes and he puts on his jacket before he flings it on, and he's like, "Let's get to work."
No,
that's how basically
it does in there, and there's already 8 episodes in the second season coming out. I don't know when the release date is for that. That was announced 3 days after it was.
Bro, yeah.
That's incredibly fast.
And I don't know if that is because of the returns came in so quickly, or if they just, Federator basically said, "Look, we've got the rest of this ready.
We're already working on it.
We're ready to go with it." And Netflix just said, "Okay."
So Netflix metrics are a big mystery because they don't, since they're not a broadcast company, they don't have to publish their metrics.
Right. But they get metrics somehow.
Oh yeah, of course they do. They have metrics on everything.
They see the matrix quite well.
Yeah, they read it well.
Yeah.
And so their metrics are just like YouTube's and anybody that streaming services. They keep them pretty close to the shirt. What's that phrase?
Close to the vest.
Close to the vest. That's it. Close to the shirt. You like that?
Yeah.
That's the new saying.
It's an old card. It's an old card.
Oh yeah, it's a cheater thing, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I get you. But yeah, so I'm thinking they saw a rise in their viewership on this show. I'm sure. I don't know if they got any new subscribers. However, I guarantee you, everyone and their dog, I bet they had to spin up some servers to start streaming it.
Well, there were a lot of people. I mean, this was very nostalgia heavy. I mean, even the commercials for it.
Oh, great commercial.
Yeah. I mean, it played off that very well. And that's what I guarantee that's the audience they went for. And it was, I'll be honest with you, I felt like I give this a solid B as far as just storyline goes. I give it a solid, I
can see your B if your problem is the storyline is too short.
Yes, and that's part of the deal. I also felt like it took a little while to develop the story.
Well, with only 4 episodes, each episode's what,
25 minutes.
25 minutes. They had 100 minutes to tell a story. I think that paced pretty good. There were some long parts like the scene, the pub scene, and some of the demon scenes.
The demon scenes, the intro when we get to Gresset was a little much,
and that's all setting the environment. And of course, they're not in a hurry, really, because if they want to go over to 27 minutes, 35 minutes, they don't really have to worry about that. They kept it at 25, I guarantee you, so they can show it on TV one day or on some sort of broadcasting that has standard commercials. That's the only reason they keep it even at 25 minutes.
I don't think Netflix will ever do that.
I don't either, but I can't think of any other reason why they'd make it 25 minutes.
Well, it's just I'm just saying that was probably on average. I don't know. I couldn't even begin to tell you what, because even Wikipedia here, which normally will tell me the the length of each episode does not list them.
Well, I'm sorry that your official source of Wikipedia isn't as
well.
as
Wikipedia does have some good uses sometimes. Maybe I'll go in there later and fix that. But
that's a good idea. You should do that.
I should. But go ahead and I mean, what was your take on it? I mean, what do you?
How many John Wicks do I give it?
I mean, how many John Wicks out of A through F do you give it?
How many John Wicks out of A through F? Let me think about that for just a moment. John Wick gets 100 John Wicks out of 100 John Wicks.
Well, that's obvious.
Everything is based out of 10 John Wicks for everything else. So everyone has an idea of how much I like the John Wickiverse. Let's go with this. 8 John Wicks, solid 8 John Wicks out of 10. Man, I enjoyed it. Yes, complaint could have been longer. Storyline development was fantastic. Would like to know a little more backstory on the speakers.
By the way, 25, 23, 23, 23.
That is very length. That's very network timing.
It is very network
timing. That is network show timing almost.
I would also like to know some history on the speakers. I would like to know the relation to the Belmonts.
Yes.
And by the way, spoiler alert, Sifa, she becomes the great grandma to Simon. Oh, I know.
What?
I just ruined it for everybody.
I didn't even watch it now. Not going to watch it.
Listen, classic trope. At first, they don't like each other.
I've never heard of this trope.
But they're going to fall.
My life must be a trope because a lot of people don't like me, but later on, I must be having their kids.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Or I'm marrying a lot of people.
You
eventually.
might not want to say that. You're going to end up on Maury Povich. You are not the father. All right. But it is leading up to a lot of things. I do think that you'll probably see Grant in the future, at least from what I understand.
Okay.
Reading some of the interviews. I hope one thing that I really wanted to do in this series that maybe I was a little disappointed was actually get to the gates. If it didn't bring us to Castlevania, actually get to the gates of Castlevania.
So we can start finding those wall chickens.
So we can start finding the wall chickens.
That's right.
And other things. But part of me, as far as the story went, I felt like it was unevenly paced at times. I felt like they stopped at some points I understand you have to stop to develop the story a bit. However, something action-y would happen. And then we'd stop and have to talk, and then more action would happen a couple episodes later. I understand that you're doing that based off your episode's length and all of that stuff, but at the same time, there were times when I was like, this is just not doing it for me.
I get you. It seemed also the fight scene at the 4th episode. Is that the 4th?
Yeah.
With the fight scene with the civilians.
Right.
That was okay. I was actually kind of getting bored.
Right.
I was kind of getting bored with that. And he does the thing, spread the word, salt hurts demons. Did people forget this? It doesn't seem like it's like super uncommon to have salt.
Well, but I understand that, but nobody knew that because the church didn't allow people to do that kind of thing. It was, I don't know, that's science, and they obviously didn't like science. Everybody if you've ever studied biology, you know that salt hurts a demon.
That's true. It's common knowledge nowadays due to our education system.
I remember having to dissect a demon in the 8th grade.
Which one did you have to dissect?
At least it smelled like a demon, and we dissected it. But I mean, it was a good show. Like I said, a solid B.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Okay.
There are a few things that I feel like they could have done stronger.
Okay.
The art was beautiful.
Yes.
The storytelling, it had a few misfires as far as I was concerned. The voice acting was I would say
stellar.
Just great.
Great voice actors. of the 4 main characters, 3 are British. And
Three are
that's
British?
that with Warren Ellis being British, not surprised there. The only one that's not British is, what's her name? The girl, magic girl,
Sifa?
Yeah, that girl. She's actually the only American voice actor.
Oh, she was American? Well, she did she did like a...
Australian?
No, not Australian. Irish accent.
Oh, was it? Oh, it was Irish, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
That I said
the
all.
only American voice actor does an Irish accent.
Well, it's weird though. Is voice.
While the other ones are doing like American sounding accents.
Well, also it's the Dark Ages, and apparently all of Europe is just British people.
Well, yeah, then that's how it was.
I always find that, like, when people think of Dark Ages, all they think of is British people across Europe.
Well, and I need to look up where exactly Wallachia is, or supposed to be. Or,
Okay.
Because I'm very interested in knowing where that's supposed to be. Like,
I
what
don't
country is like, this is smack dab in Germany. Like, no, I don't think
The castle would make sense then.
It would. It would. But overall, a good show.
Very good. I enjoyed it.
It would be one that I would recommend to people.
Of course.
Not to children.
No.
I'm not, unless you want your child to get an education on how to cuss like a sailor.
Yes.
Or cuss like they live in the 1400s or 1500s. And they want an education on what some fun activities you can do with a sheep. Those are all things that...
Well, I'm going to sit my son down and let him watch the first 10 minutes of the first episode.
Yeah.
So he knows how to handle someone who is messing with his,
Right.
if he has sheep in the future.
If you have a sheep and somebody's doing that, whack them with a shovel.
Get your shovel out.
So, Eric, any final thoughts on this?
I look forward to the next season. I hope they put out the release dates soon, which they won't put them out for another 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months. But you never know. Maybe they throw it out there.
I will say this. This would have been better, in my opinion, to release like in October.
Oh, that would be a great release. You know, if they are working on them that hard, they already got all the assets, they could release season 2 in October.
I know. I do know this though. They probably Stranger Things season 2 is coming out during October.
Yes.
And I'm guessing they probably don't want to compete.
Oh, they're not
going
to compete with that. That's one of the another flagships they have now.
Right. So
cool.
I mean, great show, good fun. If you have some time and you're older and probably 16 or older, feel free to watch it.
Yeah, it's very TVMA.
It is. Probably TVMAX.
No.
That's mature to the extreme.
You'd be like 80 to watch it.
You know what?
Extremely mature.
You know what? TV rating people, give me a call. We'll talk about getting that whole copyright thing.
Every time there's one, he gets 10 cents.
Yeah, I know. Every time you have to use it, 10 cents to this guy.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. As always, if you like what you heard or if you enjoyed any part of this, please like and subscribe. If you have some comments or some thoughts on Castlevania that you want to leave us, leave it down in the comments. Just tell us how we're doing. Tell us what's going on. Eric, anything else that they can do to support us?
Yes.
What is that?
They can leave a comment down in the whatever. They can subscribe and like. You kind of took them all.
And you know what else they can do, Eric?
Oh, we have the website's not up yet.
No!
Website's not up yet.
We are working on a website. We will have that. So make sure that to be looking out for that so that you can keep up with everything that's going on with the Pull Up a Chair podcast. And guys, we have enjoyed this. We hope you did, and we hope to see you next time. Eric, final anythings?
No. You
All
took
right.
them all.
Thank you, and we will chat with you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.